What's going on, everybody? Welcome to our first college football podcast. It's me and Matthew again. We're back. Decided after doing week one of NFL that we would get into college football as well. Matthew took made an interesting decision for his picture for the Falcons last week. He decided to keep that trend going this week. What's going on, Matt? How you doing?
Doing great, brother. As you guys can see the picture, Mike Leach, Mississippi State Bulldogs, probably the most impressive win of the week. So, that's why I went with that picture.
Yeah, it's the air raid in the SEC. I don't know if you saw my video today, but I'm very, very pumped for it. I think a lot of people are going to hop on the bandwagon and get behind it, and it's gonna be fun. But yeah, so we're gonna cover that game in a little bit. Cover Mike Leach, cover Kansas State over Oklahoma. We'll cover the Texas comeback victory down by 15 in the fourth quarter. Give some takes on our HEISMAN front runners, the college football playoff, and then we'll pick some of the games for week 4. But before we do that, let's hop into week 3. Talk about some of the winners and losers, who impressed you, and who underperformed in week 4 rather.
Well, obviously, Mississippi State, an impressive win, and then Texas on the comeback. But one game I'd like to talk about is Auburn and Kentucky. I expected, Auburn to come out looking sharp, and, they really didn't look as good. Did enough to win, and Bo Nix made some impressive throws to Seth Williams, who I think is a top 5 receiver in the NCAA right now.
Yeah.
And will probably be a likely first round, if not early second round draft pick. But big game next week. So I look for them to improve. I don't really know too much about Kentucky. I don't think they'll be a contender in the SEC. But I think Auburn can. And they didn't show their full potential last week. Coming up this week, big game against Georgia. Big rivalry. I think that's going to be a really good game.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it as well. Like you said, Bo Nix has some really big-time throws, and Seth Williams is going to be a problem for any defense, whoever Auburn plays. It was Bo's first game in Chad Morris's scheme, and he went against a pretty decent Kentucky team. I think Kentucky's possibly a top 25 team, depending on how they perform week to week. Kind of the same thing as Tennessee. I feel like Tennessee's a bubble top 25 team as well. I don't feel like they played that great over South Carolina. They got the win. But, at the end of the day, as long as you get the win, that's all that matters. I got Mississippi State down as a winner as well. And a couple other winners I have is Cincinnati with a big win over Army. It may not seem big, but I feel like it's a big win for that program just because Army's undervalued, really good team. I feel like they're overlooked for how good they truly are year in and year out. And then I also have Liberty. Liberty picked up a really good win last week with Hugh Freeze and what he's been able to do for that program in I think this is his second year, I believe. So Liberty picked up a solid win last week. I think they're a team that's possibly on the rise to a conference championship.
Hey, another team to talk about right here, Miami Hurricanes. Probably one of the most impressive teams in college football right now by statistics and score. They got a big game coming up in a couple weeks. I mean, you've already talked about that one, but what's your take on Miami? What do you think about them?
I think, they had a couple big-time recruits last year that, committed and came this year, and there are a couple more coming next year. But when you get Derek King and get him into the mix, having a solid quarterback, that's going to do a lot for your program. And Derek King had a lot of success at Houston. I think he's a well fit for that offense. And being in the ACC, I feel like I don't think they have too good of defenses over there, but I feel like it's not a cakewalk like he would have had if he would have stayed at Houston. I think his draft stock's going to go up. And altogether, them playing ACC teams consistently and putting up the numbers that they have and getting quality wins over ranked opponents. We talked about it a little bit, and we'll get to it again later, is Miami's a real contender for the ACC championship and possibly to be ACC champion. I think you even might dare say that the winner of Miami and Clemson probably make the playoffs. Because I don't think the Pac-12 is going to be a real contender this year.
I
So
agree.
you're looking at ACC, maybe two ACC, an SEC or two, and then you get Ohio State in the Big Ten. So it's one of those teams where if they don't win the ACC, then they're going to find themselves in a New Year's Six bowl for sure.
I agree.
Yeah, and
Definitely,
go ahead.
definitely a few teams to look out for in the ACC. You know, Clemson, of course, Miami, of course, but two teams, you know, that haven't really had the spotlight these two teams have had in recent weeks: North Carolina and Notre Dame. I think North Carolina's a sleeper. I mean, you know, they're always up there in the mix for the ACC championship, and I'm a big Sam Howell fan.
Yeah,
I actually have
absolutely.
him in my Heisman watch list, so it's going to be real interesting to watch that season play out for the ACC.
Yeah, I fell in love with Sam Howell last year. I think he's a solid quarterback, just like Mac Jones is. I feel like you put
Yep.
their game managers, their winning quarterbacks.
Yep.
They're not going to have the arm talent or the put up the numbers that Trevor or Tua or Justin Fields would, but they're going to win games. They're going to have you in positions to win a football game, and that's really all you can ask for from your starting quarterback.
Yep. Mac Brown's definitely turned around the program. You know, they've always been top 25, top 30 team in the NCAA, but you know now they're creeping in top 10.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I mean, Mac Brown's a Hall of Fame coach for a reason. I was excited when he took that job. I'm excited that Les Miles at Kansas. He still needs a couple years to get that thing going, but I think Brent German, when he starts getting a couple of his guys in, you know, he took over as OC last year mid-season, so this is his first actual season, complete season as offense coordinator. I've been a big fan of his for a while too. So you get Les and Brent mixed and solve all their issues, I guess, iron out the kinks and stuff, and I think Kansas could be a 6-6 team year in and year out for the Big 12.
yeah,
Pretty
I
soon.
feel like they just need a couple big wins, you know, to get on the recruiting train, and
Yeah.
you know, 5-6 good players, and you know you're back in the mix because Big 12's not really that strong of a conference, and I definitely think they can compete. You know, given if they get the players under Les Miles, so
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing is like, you know, Les Miles can recruit. That's obvious, but it's getting those recruits to come to Kansas, come to a program that's been statistically bad the past couple of years, and having
yeah,
to get those players to buy into turning that program around. And I think he can do it, but he's going to need a couple, like you said, quality wins to kind of a selling point. So it'll be interesting nonetheless. So losers for week 4. I've got 3 down. The obvious one's Oklahoma. Um, Obviously, they probably should not have lost that game, but at the same time, you got Spencer Rattler, who's a freshman quarterback, so you know he's going to have a slow start, and to me, it's kind of better that he had it in the 3rd game of the season.
right.
But at the same time, I've also got Texas A&M and Georgia both down as losers for this week. I think they really underperformed. I bought into a lot of hype surrounding Texas A&M, and I feel like if they find their groove, they could be a really dangerous team down the stretch.
Mm-hmm.
I think Alabama plays them Saturday, correct? Or is that next weekend?
Yes.
Yeah.
Nope,
So
that's this Saturday.
I feel, you know, you asked me this 3 days ago, and I'm really looking forward to the Alabama Texas A&M game. But now it's like I don't really the way Alabama played and the way A&M played. I think you know we're looking at a 3-score ball game, and I don't really think it's going to be
Yeah,
that close. Same with Auburn Georgia. I was really looking forward to that game, but the Auburn played a solid Kentucky team, and Georgia struggled against Arkansas, and I expect those to transfer to this week, even if JT Daniels does play.
yeah. Well, and I think one of the reasons, you know, Arkansas has had such a good game is, you know, new coach, and you know, it's probably a different environment, you know, because in recent years Arkansas has always been a pretty good contender, you know, 3-4 loss team, and they've struggled the last few years, of course, but they looked really good Saturday. I was impressed. You know, they gave up a lot of points late. It was close until the end, but I wouldn't say the score, you know, defines Arkansas's team. I think they have a pretty good season.
Yeah, I mean they have Felipe Franks, who's not a terrible quarterback. Obviously not as good as Kyle Trask. That's why he transferred out. But you know he's not. He's a solid quarterback for Arkansas, and yeah, I think they could have have a decent season. I just don't
Yeah,
think they're anywhere close to on par with what Georgia is.
I agree.
But yeah, so Georgia almost got upset a little bit. Tennessee almost got upset. Oklahoma got upset, and LSU got upset. So we'll go ahead and shift into the Oklahoma and Kansas State game. I wasn't able to watch a lot of it because I had that wedding on Saturday. It kind of took me away from watching a bunch of these games. But
Yeah,
watching the recap, Kansas State played really good, and like I said a minute ago, Spencer Rattler didn't play the best, but I don't think he played awful. But yeah,
yeah,
Kansas State to me just seemed like they had a really good outing. Their quarterback goes 18 for 25 for 335 yards and don't turn the ball over. So
right. And the running back, Vaughn, I believe is his last name.
yeah,
Or no, receiver. He had I think he had like 120 yards receiving and only 4 receptions. So
yeah,
they got some playmakers. They got one this week. I think it'll be a good game against Texas Tech.
yeah. I mean Texas Tech put up some numbers last week, so you're gonna have to rely on that defense and holding Oklahoma to 35. I could see Kansas State picking up a win over Texas Tech. It kind of comes down to turnovers and which defense plays better. So that game's a coin flip, could go either way.
One thing too, I think, kind of determined the Kansas State game in Oklahoma was there was a fumble late in the game, and I'm pretty sure Kansas scored in the very next play, within the next couple plays at least. Fumbled a punt, I believe.
Yeah,
So things like that can easily turn around the outcome of a game. And of course, Spencer Rattler, was preseason Heisman, one of the top 5 favorites.
yeah,
And I was not impressed with his rushing game. He's a good passer, of course, but he's a good mobile quarterback, and I think he had negative -5 yards of rushing.
yep.
So I look for that to improve too. I mean, Oklahoma looked bad late in the game. I'm sure they'll still have a great season, but definitely defensively they got a lot of things to work out.
Yeah, and you touched on Spencer being a Heisman hopeful to start the season. To me, it was more. I think he was more in there for the Oklahoma offensive part of it more so than his just natural talent as a freshman.
Yeah.
I think they kind of knew he was going to put up numbers. Not trying to take anything from him. To me, it just seems as if, had he been in another school, he probably wouldn't have been in that situation as a Heisman front runner. Which is why, to me personally, he's not a Heisman front runner in my eyes.
No.
And I really wouldn't even put him in my top 5 just because I need to see more of him. I need to see. We know he's going to put up yards. He's going to put up 300 yards a game, maybe even rush for over 50 each game, and that's to be expected in a Lincoln Riley offense. But to me, I need to see efficiency and not turning the ball over. He had, I want to say, 10 incompletions, including the interception. So when 30% of your missed targets are intercepted, that's a stat you're going to have to look to improve on.
Yeah. 3 interceptions, and then he had 1, on the last possession. But and it's got to be a lot of pressure too. Back-to-back Heisman winners.
Yeah.
Or recent Heisman winners, So.
Yeah, back-to-back and a runner-up, I believe.
Yeah.
Yeah. So. But yeah, nonetheless, Oklahoma, they get beat by Kansas State last week. That's one of 2 top 5 upsets. And then the good old air raid. Mike Leach makes a statement in his first game in the SEC, going up against the defending national champions in LSU. I'm pumped, man. Like, I don't think I can express how much I'm looking forward to seeing the air raid in the SEC, and the fact that it's going to give so many people fits. Like, I could watch it all day. I don't think I'll miss a Mississippi State game this season.
Not to mention that was the SEC record, 623 passing yards. That's just, and what a personality of a coach to bring that into the SEC.
Yep.
Me and you talk about Mike Leach a lot. We love him. But yeah, the air raid it's going to change a lot of things. Definitely going to change a lot of things.
Yeah, I mean, Mike Leach is a national treasure, and if you're watching this and you haven't seen, just YouTube highlights or anything, you just go watch like best of Mike Leach on YouTube and listen to his dating advice and marriage advice and the battle of the Pac-12 mascots and who's going to win. Like, he's really, really underappreciated, and to me, being around Mummy for a season, Mummy is like the exact same guy as Mike Leach is to me. He's not as outgoing and as what can I say here? His quotes don't get publicized as much.
Yeah.
But if you spend some time around him, he makes the same references that Mike Leach does and everything like that. Like you saw when he broke his leg back in I think it was the XFL, and he was like, I'm not soft or whatever, like I'm still going to coach and everything. So that was just a small little insight to what Mummy and Leach's mind is like. And I think like I would give anything to spend a day with both of those guys just to see what it would be like and the conversations that would be held.
And one thing for LSU too, it's can't be easy losing 17 starters. The year after you win the national championship and have an outstanding historical season, and then all the players that were out, whether they opted out the season or, one key player had an injury or whatever, hospitalized the night before. So one thing that stuck out to me, though, is LSU punted the ball 7 times. You know how many times they punted the ball last year?
I'm going to go with probably less than 20.
Yeah, 18 times.
Wow. Yep.
That was from game 1 until the national championship. So
that's crazy. But yeah, I mean, losing, what would that be, 75, 80% of your returning starters?
Yeah.
That's going to suck no matter who you are. But then you get the defending national champion going against, realistically, the first time majority of those players have seen an offense like that. You're going to struggle. And just to touch on the schematics of the offense, like it's not, you can see it all day. And I mean, the air raid's only 10 plays or so. I mean, obviously you have wrinkles on each play and everything, but like you're going to see the same 10 plays every time, but you're going to see 45 different versions of that one play.
Right.
And that's what makes the air raid so deadly. And I think that's where Mike Leach gave LSU fits, because every time they were in cover 2, it was mesh. Every time they were in cover 3, it was Y cross, or vice versa. But nonetheless, it's just that offense can give you fits. And props to KJ Costello and his first game in the system and going up against the SEC defense. And it's not like they're a young defense, but I would still say they're probably in the top half of the SEC. Even being as young as they are. So it's not like they were going up against a cupcake defense. He had his work cut out for him, but he lived up to the challenge.
In playing in the SEC West, too, it's going to be a challenge. So that was a great statement win, like you said. But one thing I want to touch on is Mississippi State had less than 20 rushing yards. And, yes, they threw for about 1 million yards passing. But, I think we do see Mike Leach install some sort of rushing aspect, especially when you get teams like Alabama and Auburn, on down the line. He's going to have some sort of rushing. That's personal opinion, but man, what a game! I was very impressed.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm really mad because I think when we recorded the NFL podcast on Thursday, I told you to go look at my picks, and I had Mississippi State winning. Then I swapped it on Friday to LSU winning.
Yeah.
And then on Saturday when I found out Derek Stingley was out, I changed it back. I was like, no, I'm putting a lot of faith in Mississippi State and Colin Hill and Mike Leach to win this game.
Yeah.
Sure enough, they win it. So I technically got it right, even though I got it wrong on paper. But yeah, so I'm excited. I'm excited to see the air raid in the SEC. I think a lot of people are going to jump on the bandwagon and get behind it, get behind Mike Leach, and hopefully everyone will start to respect the air raid.
Yeah, and you see that, you see the stat, 50% passing, 623 yards, 5 touchdowns from Costello, which is remarkable. But you also got 3 receivers combined for 21 receptions, 463 yards, and 3 touchdowns. That's crazy, because I would say 60, if not 70% of the teams in the NCAA won't even have 3 receivers that have over 100 yards or 21 receptions combined.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy stats. Fun game to watch. I look forward to watching the rest of the season.
Yeah, Colin Hill, I'm looking at the stats right now. He ran 7 times for 35 yards. So, I mean, you average 5 yards per carry. but you only ran the ball 7 times with your number one running back. So it'll be different, but obviously LSU wasn't able to close out the game against Mississippi State at home. But let's get into a team that was able to close out the game, and that'll be Texas. Sam Ehlinger put on a really, really good performance. 6 touchdowns, 5 through the air, 1 on the ground. They were down 15, I believe, in the fourth quarter with like 3 minutes left, forced overtime, and then won it in double OT, or was it regular OT?
I think it was just overtime.
Okay.
Just 1 overtime.
Yeah. But yeah, so I mean that was another good game, and Kay told me to talk about how bad the Big 12 is. I'm not gonna do that yet, but I will say that was a rough game to watch defensively.
Yeah, which Texas Tech had an outstanding offensive game too.
Yeah.
Alan Bowman threw for 5 touchdowns. He did have 3 interceptions, but the running back, how do you pronounce his name?
Roderick. Yeah.
Yeah. 104 yards on 16 carries and 2 touchdowns. That's impressive. So I think I'm not going to take anything away from Texas Tech. I think they have a winning season, of course, but yeah. And then for Texas, Joshua Moore, 3 touchdowns. That's just on 5 receptions. Texas is good. I'm not going to say Texas is back, but very impressive comeback win. Like you said, 21-point comeback. So,
yeah, Texas performed collectively well. Obviously, when you give up 56 points in a game, it's not pretty. But you got the win, and like we said, that's at the end of the day, that's all you can ask for. If you come out with a W, then you did your job.
Texas only had a 6% or 0.6% chance to win because. I read the stat I wrote it down right here. It says teams trailing by 15 plus in the fourth quarter are 12 and 1,853. They're 12. Only 12 people have come back and won. Or 12 teams have came back and won. So,
wow,
very impressive. Sam Ehlinger, phenomenal quarterback. Probably will wind up being in the Heisman race. I don't think he wins, but he'll be in the talk.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Experienced quarterback. We've watched him as a freshman. We used to talk about him. So,
yeah, he beat out Shane Buechele, which led to him transferring to SMU. Yeah, I mean, I'm a fan of Texas. I'm waiting for them to get to find that groove and stay a top contender in the Big 12, where they're beating Oklahoma for the championship every year, and then eventually be a team that's taken into consideration for the playoff every season. They're not there yet. I think they're a top 10 bubble team. If they perform, then they'll stay in the top 10, and then just depending on who they beat and who they lose to, whether they make the playoff or not. I think they performed well against Texas Tech. Like you said, Texas Tech is a good team. So it was a really good game. It was just to me, it seemed kind of sloppy.
Yeah, definitely sloppy. A lot of turnovers.
119 points, I think, was scored. Which is
63-56, so whatever that is.
Yeah,
I can't add that up on top of my head.
your normal Big 12 game, but nonetheless, if I think if Texas wants to have a real shot at winning the championship, you're going to have to work on that defense just a little bit. Yeah, Bowman threw the ball 52 times, had 5 touchdowns from Sam Ehlinger. And then you look at the rushing stats. Keontae Ingram had 7.5 yards per carry. Sam Ehlinger rushed for 70 yards. Johnson rushed for 45. So, I mean, even with them, I think that puts them at around 90 plays, and they were about 55-45 run pass, and you still hung 63 points. So, very balanced attack. I like Texas. I think they could end up in the college football playoff, but whether or not it happens, who knows?
Another thing to look at too is Texas had the ball, I think, almost 10 minutes more, than Texas Tech did in the game, and still almost lost. But
yeah,
time possession, I believe, is a big thing. Especially if you're going to put up that much points, because you're pretty much scoring just about every time you touch the ball.
Yeah,
you don't turn it over. So
yeah, well, I'll go ahead and ask you this before we move on to the rest of the podcast. If you had to take a pick between Texas and Miami to make the playoffs, who are you taking?
Oh, I think Texas has a better chance just because they don't have to play a Clemson or an ACC schedule, which I believe is a tougher conference than the Big 12. But honestly, I think Miami has the best chance. Texas has the easiest road.
Yeah, that's
If
what
that
I
makes
think.
sense.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think Texas has the easier path to making the top four, but I think if you put these teams head to head, I think Miami would probably come out with the victory.
Yeah, I
So
agree.
I think you're looking at, which I don't think it'll happen. With everything going on right now, I don't know exactly how the bowls and the playoffs and everything's going to work this year. Um, and obviously Texas would end up in the Rose Bowl playing Michigan, maybe, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, but depending on how the bowls, I haven't looked and seen how they're operating and whatnot, and obviously they may not even know. But I'd love to see Texas and Miami square off if those two teams were to miss the playoff. So
Yeah.
I think those are two dark horses, two teams that could slide in, and I don't think anybody would realistically be surprised should either of those teams make the playoffs.
Which I know Miami plays Clemson. I don't know if they have to play Notre Dame, but and like we said earlier, you still got to get through North Carolina, but they're I think they're a Clemson win away from probably being in the playoff. They looked really impressive. Florida State's down. They beat the brakes off of them, but can't take away from the fact that they were clicking offensively and defensively the other day. So
Yeah, so, touching on that, you mentioned Notre Dame. Is this the year that Notre Dame could possibly make the playoffs just for the fact that they're actually playing a conference schedule? I think me and you could agree that right now you have Clemson, Florida, and Alabama as the top three teams with a chance to make the playoffs.
yeah,
Throw Ohio State in there when they start playing. But I think you look at your next three or four teams to get in besides those guys, and you got Georgia if they start performing. You have Miami, you have Texas, and then if Notre Dame runs the table, you're looking at Notre Dame being one of those guys that can make it in too.
I think in two another team. If Auburn can win this Saturday, if of course they can always beat Alabama. It's always a good game.
Yeah.
And if they beat Georgia, and I think they roll through the rest of the season, you could be looking at them playing for the ACC championship and
Yeah.
potentially playoffs. So
Yeah, if you want, we can go ahead and get into our college football playoff predictions.
yeah,
I've kind of got it narrowed down to my teams. I got Alabama, Florida, Ohio State, and then Clemson / Miami. Basically, whoever wins the ACC. But like you said, I mean, I could see Georgia making it. I could see Auburn making it, and it's kind of in the same situation with the ACC, where it's whoever wins the SEC is in, and then but at the same time, the runner-up could also make it in, because you're getting to a scenario where you could have a 2-loss SEC team make the playoffs just for the fact that they kind of all beat each other up. I think Florida plays Georgia. They don't play Auburn, but they'd have to play Alabama or Auburn in the championship.
right.
They play Texas A&M. Auburn plays Georgia and Alabama. Alabama plays Texas A&M, Tennessee. Do we play South Carolina?
They play Georgia.
We play Georgia, yeah. So, I mean, I could see a case where a 2-loss SEC team makes the playoffs, and I don't even think anybody would realistically be mad about that either.
Yeah, I can see it. It could happen. Which I don't have a Pac-12 team in the playoff this year.
Not at all.
My 4 spot, I've got Texas and Miami, and then my 3 spot got Ohio State, and then my 2 spot I got the SEC winner, who I predict, of course, will be Alabama or Florida. It could be Auburn as well, depending on how their season goes. And at the 1 spot, I'll have Clemson.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to the only team that's going to beat Clemson is either themselves, and they're going to lose, or Miami. And I say themselves, I mean, you look at the past 2 years, they've had one game where they should have lost to NC State on the field goal. They should have lost to North Carolina last year on the 2-point conversion.
Yeah.
I don't think it was more of them getting beat. It was more of them getting beat than them actually losing. You hear the statement like winners lose, or losers lose, winners get beat. And it just comes down to can Clemson stay perfect on the year. But I think if there's one team that could ruin that for them, it would be Miami. So
Yeah, and given the craziness of, all the new scheduling and stuff, not that, it doesn't mean anything, the conference championship every year, because of course it does. It has a lot to do with the college football playoff. But I think this year there's a little more, I guess you could say, like, there's an asterisk star beside it, just because, you're going to be looking at, the winner of the Iron Bowl is probably going to be playing for the West and the SEC. I assume Florida's going to run the table if Georgia, doesn't pick things up.
yeah,
Big Ten, Ohio State's easily the favorite. And then you got ACC and Big 12, which Oklahoma could still work their way back. I don't see it. And you got Texas, but the ACC's, that's the one that I'm keeping my eye on this year outside of the SEC, is the ACC, because you got three teams that are pretty much top 10 teams right now. Probably will finish top 15, and I could see all three of those teams losing to each other some shape, form, or fashion.
yeah.
So
And I just pulled
it'll
up
be
Ohio
interesting.
State's schedule, and they start off with Nebraska.
Yeah.
Nebraska has a gauntlet. We'll get to that more when the Big Ten starts to prepare for their matches or their
Yeah.
games. But you start off with Nebraska, then you go to Penn State, who's ranked number 10. Then you get Rutgers, Maryland, Illinois, Indiana, and Michigan State. I think
Yeah.
everybody in the world is going to pick Ohio State to win those games. And then
Yeah.
you finish off with Michigan and the Big Ten championship. So you're looking at an 8-game schedule where a quarter of those games are going to be actual challenges, or a third if you include the championship. But at the same time, I mean, the championship could be a cakewalk too. It just kind of depends on how the other side of the Big Ten shape up.
Mm-hmm. And Penn State's a dark horse team too for the Big Ten. I don't think they're
Yeah,
a playoff team. I can't say too much because we haven't seen them play.
right.
But they very well could upset Ohio State, and then you could watch Ohio State win out the rest of the season, win the Big Ten, and still make it in. So
Yeah. Yeah, it'll be fun. I think a lot of people could agree with a potential playoff expansion. I would be
yeah,
perfectly okay with the playoff expansion, and it's just for the fact that it kind of. I feel like at 4 teams you always leave somebody out,
yeah,
but then you get to with 6 teams you could still possibly leave somebody out. Maybe like just depending on the season, and then but if you get to 8 teams, you're going to get to me, you're going to have 4 first-round games. 2 of those are going to be blowouts, not worth watching. But then 2 of them are going to be really, really good games. For instance, you
yeah,
get Texas and Miami in the first round. You get Florida and Penn State in the first round or something of that matter. And, obviously Alabama and Clemson and Ohio State are just a bar above everybody right now. But
yeah,
then you get that second pack, and that's where it kind of goes to. You're going to leave somebody out of that 4th spot. And that's
yeah.
why I
Because
think expansion would be all right.
I agree. Because we could easily see Alabama and Auburn both win out, and let's say Alabama wins the Iron Bowl, they're going to go on and play the SEC championship. More than likely win. Unless Florida has just outstanding season. But then again, say Auburn wins, and you already know Alabama's still a top 5 team, and they go on and lose the SEC championship. What kind of predicament does that put the playoff committee in with only 4 teams getting in? It's definitely worth talking about. I don't. I haven't really thought and read too much about should it expand, should it not? But I could agree. I think 6 teams, 8 teams is probably about the maximum, and I would like to see that. But given the season, the circumstances this year, it's going to be really tough to
Yep.
decide just 4 teams.
Yeah, I think if you look at how the FCS has it, um, I think they actually have too many teams in it. But I think to me the FCS playoffs are just as enjoyable as the college football playoff because
Yeah.
to me with it just being a 14 playoff, you're kind of taken away from the bowl games. If you're not in the playoffs, your
Mm-hmm.
bowl game's not important. So I think expanding would increase the value of those other bowl games without really kind of making anybody else mad. Maybe you add another game or two to the in my 6. Um, but yeah, I'm an advocate for playoff expansion. I think 8 teams would be ideal. You're going to have years where everyone knows who the top 3 or 4 teams are, but then you're going to have years where you go, all right, these 2 are going to play for the national championship, but you have 6 teams that qualify for these last 2 spots. So who do you pick? And this year with it being all conference schedules, you got all SEC, all ACC, all Big Ten. It kind of helps for the playoff scenario. But then it's kind of like, well, you didn't see Alabama and USC to start the year, so USC goes 8-0 or 7-0, however many games they're playing, and then they're sitting there like, well, why aren't we in talk? Because they got screwed out of playing against Alabama in Week 1. So
yeah, and then you're going to have teams like Minnesota was last year, so those teams that they're not going to compete in the playoff, but they've showed they beat Ohio State or whoever. And roll on undefeated season, 1-loss season. Could very easily, record-wise, play in the playoff, but they're not going to get the chance. So
right. Yeah, that's what it comes down to. It'll be, I think it's something that everyone's going to discuss for years to come. Could it, should we expand? When do we expand? Things of that nature. But
yeah.
Who knows? I'm fine with 4 teams. I'd be fine with 8 teams. I'd be fine with 6 teams. I don't think you can really mess it up. I think it's more of people are just upset with the way it was shifted from the BCS to the college football playoff, and now they don't want to change it again, basically.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. So, but we'll go ahead and get into the Heisman hopefuls for this year. Heisman frontrunners, I think we can both agree that Trevor Lawrence is definitely in the mix. But besides Trevor, who else are you looking at?
My number 1 guy right now, Kyle Trask. And you ask why? It's because 416 yards, 6 touchdowns. But the key thing for me is 0 interceptions.
Yeah.
That's hard to do in a college football game, I think, if you throw the ball 42 times like he did. But, I've got a lot of people wrote down here just because we haven't seen a lot of people play. But I think Kyle Trask and Trevor Lawrence are probably the top 2 as of now. I think Chuba Hubbard will be in the mix. Jalen Waddle will probably be in the mix. And I wrote down below, I've got an honorable mention type thing. I've got, Sam Howell, Justin Fields, Ehlinger, Costello, Derek King. Any of those guys could find themselves, in the top 3 in 5-6 weeks.
Yeah.
But as of now, I'm going Kyle Trask and Trevor Lawrence. They're probably my 2 front runners.
Yeah, I've got Trevor Lawrence and I've got Derek King. Derek King has 67% completion percentage. He's thrown for 750 yards and I think 6 touchdowns. And the 6 touchdowns aren't really impressive, but when you look at the way he's taking care of the ball and Miami's winning games and putting up points, I think he's playing to a higher level overall than his statistics show. And I think for that reason he deserves to be in the conversation. Like you said, Kyle Trask as well, and you touched on his no interceptions. He's 13 touchdowns to 2 interceptions in his last 6 games, and I'm pretty sure you take away that 6th game and he's like 11 touchdowns, no interceptions, or somewhere around there in his last 5, or maybe it's his last 3. I'm not sure, but he finished the season strong last year and he's off to a good start this year. Chuba, you can throw him in there. Costello is going to be in the mix just because of the numbers he's going to put up. I don't think Mississippi State will have a good enough season for him to win the Heisman, but when you look at his numbers alone, I think he'll be in the mix. I think those are my 4 or 5 guys right now that I'm going to go with. Like you said, Justin Fields is going to be in there later on. You could throw a couple other guys in there once we get later on in the season and the Pac-12 and the Big Ten start playing more. But for now, I'm going to go with Derek King and Trevor Lawrence.
ACC.
Yeah. And with that, we covered the college football playoffs, covered the Heisman, covered Texas, covered LSU, covered K-State, went over week 4. You want to talk about Alabama really quick? Get into some more Roll Tide action?
Let's do it.
Yeah,
gotcha.
So, for those of you that don't know, and I know a lot of people watch this podcast that know me and Matthew personally. We're both from Alabama. We played the same high school together. I played wide receiver. He played quarterback. We're both Alabama fans, just football fans in general. So we may have a little bit of bias towards the SEC, and especially with Alabama, but it is what it is.
I'm going to try not to, though. I really am.
Yeah,
I'm going to try
yeah,
not to.
yeah,
Because there
especially.
are a lot of good teams out there, good players. So
Yeah,
try
and
to
I
put the
think
bias aside.
yeah, and I think if you listen to the podcast and listen to the points we're making, I don't. It's not like we're talking out of our ass here. We know what we're talking about. We both have a high football IQ. Um, so if you do hear a little bit of bias, you can call us out on it. But like he said, we're trying to get away from it. But I think mostly every week we're gonna cover Alabama in some capacity. So if there's any Alabama fans out there, you can let it be known. Um, but yeah, so Alabama picks up a 19-point victory against the Missouri Tigers in their head coach's first game. I can't remember his
Yeah.
name right now. Um, got to see a little bit of Bryce Young. Najee Harris looked good. Mac Jones really efficient. I'm looking at 6 different guys that marked rushes. We have 7 guys with catches. Two of those 7 both were negative yards. And then the defense, man, the defense really impressed me. I know you got to watch it live. I went back and watched a little bit of the recap today and Saturday once I got home from the wedding.
Yeah.
So what do you think? Who impressed you most on Saturday night?
Okay, I'll give you my, of course, offensive most impressed. Got to go with Jalen Waddle. Not taking anything away from Najee and Mac. Najee three rushing touchdowns, but Jalen Waddle, man, he's on a different level than the rest of the people in college football. I think everybody can agree with that. But on defense, I'm gonna go with Daniel Wright. 11 tackles. Pretty sure this was first game getting a start. So, and I was talking to you the other day about Christian Harris. He was hitting pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
And I was worried about the defense coming into it because last year we got a pretty good bit of points, and like we said, 38-19 final. It was 28-3 before halftime. I think Saban let off the brakes a little bit. A lot of people got playing time.
Definitely, yeah.
So my big thing this year, Dylan Moses back, defense. I think if the defense stays strong, I think that's going to be our key. Obviously the offense is going to put up points. But defense, man, that's what I told you last week before they even played. That's going to be my number one thing to watch this year. My number one excitement, of course, being an offensive guy. Defense is still my favorite. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing with our defense, to me, they just all looked hungry. They looked like they were flying around. I don't think you saw a lot of solo tackles. You saw 2 or 3 guys there, and if there was one guy at the tackle, there was multiple guys surrounding. And I think that's what you have to have from a defense. And touching on the youth, there's not a single senior in the starting 11 on defense. Dylan Moses is a junior, Surtain's a junior. There's 2 or 3 other juniors there, but then there's mostly sophomores, and there's even one freshman. So I mean, you look at it this way too, which Dylan Moses is going after this year. Surtain's probably going after this year. But if 9 out of 11 starters come back next year, I mean, you're looking at a really, really good defense. So even if the defense struggles a little this year, you're looking at least over half of those guys are coming back again next year. So
yeah, and one thing you got to think about too is this year nobody's losing a year of eligibility. So literally all these, I don't think they're gonna. Dylan Moses, he's gonna be a first round pick. Surtain's probably gonna be a first round pick. Some of those guys, they're not gonna come back, but they could.
Right.
And this goes for the rest of the teams in college football. All these people can return. So it's going to be interesting to see, especially at the end of the season. I don't want to wish it away, but it's going to be nice. It's going to be nice if a lot of these guys return.
Yeah, nobody losing a year of eligibility is huge. That's really, really key, and that could even go a long way for just not even with Alabama and the SEC, but with anybody with record books. They're essentially you're getting a free 5th year if you're some guys, who's not going to be a first, second round pick, and you're just looking to make a name for yourself and rewrite the history books. You basically get a free 5th year handed to you on a silver platter. So you're kind of dumb not to take advantage of that. But then you look at guys too, like Mac Jones, who had to sit behind Tua and sit behind Jalen for a couple of years, and now it's his time to shine. And we all know Bryce Young's waiting, but at the same time, you could get 2 years of Mac Jones just because he's got that extra year now. Um, but yeah, so and then Mechie did pretty good too. He had 2 catches for 42 yards, but I was impressed with how he played as well.
Yeah, he was one of my preseason guys I think is going to step up, because, we lost pretty good bit of receivers last year, Ruggs and Judy, key players. And, my favorite, Waddle, he's back. And I don't think Devontae Smith has as good a year as he has just because people are going to key in on him and Waddle both. So I'm really looking at, John Mechie. He's going to have I think he's going to have a good season once he gets going, gets the feel for it. Because I'm pretty sure Saturday was his first start, other than last year when I think it was Ruggs was out a game or half a game.
Yeah. Yeah,
injury,
Ruggs missed one of the games later in the year because I remember him and Tua chilling on the sidelines. I think it was the week after the Mississippi State game, I want to say.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, like you said, I think you're going to get some defenses that are going to be able to key on Waddle or Smith. I think Waddle's going to put up much bigger numbers than Smith does, but I think when you look at terms of efficiency, Devontae Smith is going to be up there. And so, yeah, I mean, Auburn, maybe Georgia would be 2 teams I could look at that could single one of those guys out and the other guy has a bigger day. But then it kind of comes down to, do you want to focus on Jalen Waddle or do you want to focus on Devontae Smith? Because either way, I kind of feel like you're making the wrong choice.
And obviously the receiving core is great, and that's one of the reasons I think that separates Alabama is the return of Najee Harris. I think that was huge for us. But talking about Auburn, Auburn could easily beat Alabama late in the season. Texas A&M could upset on Saturday. Georgia is a potential winner, but there's one team in particular that I'm worried about this year, and that's Tennessee. Because, it's been literally over half my life since they've beaten us. Got a good club coming in or this year. Good recruiting last couple of years. So they'll definitely be a team to watch. They're out for blood, I'm sure. But, I think Najee Harris is one of the key returns for us that's going to help our offense stay successful.
Yeah, we didn't play too well against Tennessee last year, and what's scary about that is Tennessee had a lot of freshmen and sophomores last year.
Yeah.
They were very, very, very young, and I think that's something that everybody kind of looked at like, oh, Tennessee sucks. Well, yeah, they suck. They have half their team. I want to say
18 years old.
Yeah, I want to say 50 or 60 of the players on that team were under 20, under 19. But yeah, so they have a really good squad that's now has some experience under their belt coming back. But I'll tell you this, I'm more worried about Mississippi State or Tennessee beating Alabama than I am Texas A&M or Georgia or Auburn, because I think those are games where the teams know it's a big game, know it's a game they have to win. They're going to show up and they're going to perform. Where people, I'm telling you, they're going to underestimate the power of the air raid. And Nick Saban's going to have a fit all week, just having to prepare for that, because you think you have it covered, and as soon as you do, there's something new coming that you've never seen before. And I think for that reason, it's just going to give Alabama and everybody in the SEC fits.
I agree, and that goes back to what I was saying earlier about the rushing yards. If they can figure out a good rushing game to get 80+ rushing yards a game, maybe a touchdown or two. They could be a dark horse team in the West. I mean, easily. So.
Yeah, I agree with that. So we'll get off Alabama for a minute, and we'll head just to strictly the SEC and get into our Week 5 predictions, where we got 8 SEC games this week. We got South Carolina and Florida, Missouri and Tennessee, Texas A&M and Alabama, Ole Miss at Kentucky, Arkansas at Mississippi State, Auburn at Georgia. And then we have LSU and Vanderbilt to round it off. South Carolina and Florida, who you thinking in that one?
I will say South Carolina looked impressive last week.
Yeah.
I honestly thought they were going to win the game, to be honest. But, of course, I'm taking my Heisman frontrunner and Florida Gators by 2 scores.
Yeah. South Carolina really, I think had they not started off with Tennessee, maybe started off with Arkansas, Missouri, Vanderbilt, potentially maybe Ole Miss or Kentucky. I think South Carolina may pull that game out. I think Tennessee, just being as youthful as they did, not really losing a lot of guys, they were able to come keep that chemistry up from last year that they had built throughout the season. Pulled out the win in that one. So yeah, I'm big on South Carolina, but not big enough to take them over Florida. I think Florida wins it by about 2 scores. I'll go ahead and move into Tennessee and Missouri. I think that's going to be another really close game, and I think if Tennessee can live up to the hype around them, I've got Tennessee taking that one. Missouri didn't look bad last week considering who they were playing. They had a pretty decent second half. Their defense looked all right in the second half. They shut down. I texted you. They shut down Alabama's run game there in the fourth quarter. So I'm going to take Tennessee over Missouri.
Yeah, I like Tennessee as well. But I will say something about Missouri. Freshman quarterback, no interceptions last week. Had 1 touchdown pass. So I think, like you said, it'll be a close game. But yeah, I like Tennessee in that one as well, especially in Knoxville.
Yeah, and then I'll go ahead and make this pick for both of us. We got Alabama over Texas A&M, and then we'll head on down to Lexington and Ole Miss versus Kentucky. Ole Miss put up a lot of points and a lot of yards last week. Kentucky had a tough outing against Auburn, but I think with Lane Kiffin in Ole Miss, just a new system, a lot of young talent there. I'm gonna go with Ole Miss over the Wildcats.
Yeah, I like Ole Miss as well. Close game last week until pretty much, or it wasn't really close. It kind of stayed. Florida kept their distance, but Ole Miss did outscore them in the fourth quarter. I was really impressed with Ole Miss quarterback Matt Corral, I believe is how you say it. 395 yards, 3 touchdowns. Kentucky last week, they kind of looked a little beat, but yeah, I like Ole Miss.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Ole Miss's offense last week, and that's the main reason why I'm taking them over Kentucky. Speaking of offenses, we got Arkansas at Mississippi State. Costello is going to throw for 400 yards against Arkansas. Felipe Franks is going to put up 300, but it's not going to be enough to outscore the air raid, and I got Mississippi State probably taking this one by about 10 to 14 over Arkansas.
I agree. Same as you. I like Mississippi State by about 2 touchdowns, 10 points. somewhere in that range.
Next, we'll get to a top. I want to say top 10 matchup: Auburn and Georgia.
I think 7-4. I believe that's what they are.
Yeah, so we got Auburn and Georgia in that one. What are you thinking?
I'm taking Auburn, man. Bo Nix, Seth Williams, definitely one of the top wide receiver quarterback duos in the country. Could be the best in the SEC. Could be. I like Auburn probably by about 10, 13 points. I think they come out because they looked a little scrappy last week, a little sloppy against Kentucky.
Yep.
Bo Nix threw some beautiful passes, beautiful touchdown passes. So yeah, I like them by about 13 points.
Yeah, and like I said earlier, it was Bo Nix's first game in Chad Morris's offense, and Chad Morris has a deadly offensive scheme, and I think once Bo gets comfortable in it, then he's just going to improve even more than he already has. So I'm going to take Auburn in that one as well. And Georgia, I don't think it really matters who they're going to put at quarterback. I think if JT Daniels starts, they possibly have a better chance at winning. Just for how he played at the end of the season last year, but I still think Auburn's a little too stout, and Auburn's going to win that one. And then I've got LSU. You go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say, they're playing in Georgia too, and I know there's not as many fans, so it won't have that much effect on the game. I think Auburn struggles early, but I think they pull it out.
Yeah, I definitely could see that. And then I'm gonna go ahead and take the other Tigers and LSU getting back on their feet and picking up a win over Vanderbilt, who, in my eyes, I don't think Vanderbilt's that bad of a squad either. I just don't think they're able to compete with LSU.
Yeah, they're like a tier 2 team playing in like a tier 1 conference, so it's real tough for Vanderbilt to compete always. They don't get the recruiting everybody does, but yeah, I like LSU. Terrace Marshall Jr. last week, 2 touchdowns, over 100 yards receiving. I think he has another big game. I think Miles Brennan, 2 interceptions last week. I think if he throws no interceptions this week, I think they win this one by about 20 plus.
Yeah, I could see LSU pulling away in this one late. Probably a good close first half game, and as the time goes on, LSU pulls away from it and takes the win in that one. We'll get out of the SEC here and go to a little Texas school out there who I actually had in my Snapchat memories pop up today, where I was at this college 2 years ago today. SMU taking on Memphis. I think that's a really underrated game. Shane Buechele and SMU, who's currently 3-0 on the season. They had a postponed game with TCU, or they would be 3-1 or 4-0. What are you thinking in that one?
We talked about this earlier. Memphis hasn't played in about 2-3 weeks, and they did struggle in their last game against Arkansas State. I think they only won that one by like 13, 14 points. But I'm still going to stick with Memphis. I think they have overall better players, and I could see them getting beat very well. But I'm going to take. I like Memphis in this one by about 6 or 7 points.
Yeah, I'm gonna go opposite of you on this one. I think for the you touched on Memphis not playing in a month. I think for that reason, they're gonna come out slow, and I think with them coming out slow, SMU is gonna jump on them early. 2 or 3 score game, and I think from that point, Memphis may make a late run. But I don't think it'll be enough. I like Shane Buechele, and SMU's averaging 45 points a game, so I'm gonna take SMU, and I honestly think if you're looking at betting on this game, whatever the score line is, 50 or 60, take the over. I think this is going to be a really high scoring game. You're looking at 70, 80 points. So if you're a betting man out there, I would encourage to take the over on this one.
And if I'm not mistaken, they were game day last year, were they not?
I want to say they might have been.
I think it was a top 25 showdown, top 20 showdown. But if I remember correctly, it was a shootout. It was a back and forth score, a very exciting game. I can't remember who won exactly, but definitely a good game to watch.
Yeah, and SMU's got a new coach down there, don't they?
I couldn't tell you.
I want to say SMU head coach. Yeah, Sonny Dykes. Sonny Dykes.
New coach, 3-0. Not the strongest conference. Some top 25 teams, but definitely a team that can creep their way into the top 20.
Yeah, so Sonny Dykes has been there for 3 years. He's been there since 2017. I thought he came maybe 2018 or last year, but nonetheless, Sonny Dykes is a really good coach. He started out his career at JUCO. He was a running backs coach at Navarro, and then he swapped to quarterback coach, and then ended up in the SEC at Kentucky. Was that with Mummy?
Do not know, bro.
He was a GA tight end coach in '97, and then wide receiver coach in '99. So yeah, he was there with Mummy and the hefty lefty, which explains a lot. That explains why SMU is going to throw the ball and put up points.
Hey, and I got another game for you. Both of our wives graduated from the local school right up the road. Jacksonville State at Florida State. Who's liking that one? Because Florida State's looking rough, and Jacksonville State in recent years has known to come close to upsetting teams, if not beating them like they did LSU. So that's gonna be a fun one to watch. Could be a big win for Jacksonville State.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm big enough on taking Jacksonville State because it's their first game of the season. But Mike Norvell, he missed last week. I don't know what happened, if he had surgery or he was just sick or COVID or whatever. But he wasn't even at the game against Miami last week. And then, like you said, Florida State's down. Florida State's been struggling the past couple of years. But with John Gross and Sandlin and Ogle and what they have going on at Jacksonville State's really, it's astounding. Essentially, you got 5 conference championships in 5 years. That's really unheard of, no matter what division you're playing at. I'm big on Jacksonville State, man. They only have 4 games this year. They've got Florida State, North Alabama, Mercer, and one other game. Florida State, yeah, obviously.
And I believe I saw something on Twitter earlier where Jacksonville State's quarterback is like 1 touchdown pass away from the school record in a career. Or he may be already tied, I'm not sure. But either way, he could be breaking some records this week. I'd like to see Jacksonville State win that one. They could. I believe this is their first game of the year. Is that right?
Yeah, Zarek Cooper transferred from Clemson. I saw the tweet you were talking about. I can't remember exactly what it said. But yeah, I mean, I'm big on Jacksonville State as well. I'd love to see them get a win. I think it would be big for that program. A lot of for us being in Alabama, we realize how good to an extent, Jacksonville State has been. They've kind of let us down in the playoffs once they got there. But I mean, this was a team that was in the FCS National Championship against North Dakota State just a couple years ago. It's not too long ago. They're coming off 5 out of the last 6 conference championships. So yeah, I don't think anyone, I don't think me or you would be surprised to see Jacksonville State win it. But Florida State fans, man, I think they might lose their minds.
Yeah, that would definitely be an upsetting loss for. I know a couple close friends that are Florida State fans that they wouldn't really appreciate that one at all if they come out with an L. But hey, right quick, you were talking about North Dakota State. Man, I was really wanting to watch. Who are they going to play? Oregon?
Yes, I think so.
Man, I was really looking forward to that game. But that's a conversation for another day.
Yeah, well, while we're here, Easton Stick, I don't think he got to play, but he was almost close to getting a play against the Panthers on Sunday when Justin Herbert had to come out of the game. And Easton Stick's old. That's not right. Did Easton Stick play at Washington State? Or was that somebody else? Because I feel like when he came into the game, the announcers said Easton Stick, the quarterback from North Dakota State, but I don't. Easton State College. He did play at North Dakota State. Who was the good quarterback a couple years ago that went underrated from Eastern Washington, Washington State? Not Minshew, obviously.
Yeah.
Somebody else, but nonetheless, North Dakota State, Easton Stick, he almost got some NFL action.
Yeah.
So we'll get into the ACC games here. If you've got them wrote down, you want to go ahead and call them out. I'll make some predictions on those.
Yeah, you got North Carolina State at Pittsburgh. You got North Carolina at Boston College. And then, like we said earlier, Jacksonville State at Florida State, Virginia Tech at Duke, and Virginia at number 1 Clemson. So who you like in North Carolina State at 24 Pittsburgh?
NC State struggled last week. They got beat by 21 by 3 scores against Virginia Tech, and they beat Wake Forest the week before. It didn't beat them by much, but they did get the win. But I don't think they're going to have what it takes to pull them out this week, and I'm gonna have to go with NC State taking the L in that one.
Yeah, and Pittsburgh escaped last week with a 3-point victory over Louisville, who I thought was going to win that game soundly.
Yeah,
but I was impressed by Pittsburgh. So just like you, I'm taking Pittsburgh, probably by about 3 scores in that game. So, and then next we got number 12 North Carolina at Boston College. I think North Carolina wins that one with ease. I think Sam Howell has a pretty good game for his Heisman case. So I'm taking North Carolina big in that one.
Yeah, I think so as well. I think Sam Howell's to me, he's a top 3 quarterback in the ACC. So I think I'm going to go with North Carolina in that one as well. Then we got Virginia Tech at Duke. Virginia Tech was ranked last week. And now they dropped out of the top 25. This doesn't really make sense coming off a win. But I think Virginia Tech's going to take that one over Duke as well.
Yeah. And then, of course, I'm sure we both agree Clemson's going to win at home versus Virginia pretty easily. I wouldn't be surprised if it's by 30 points. Virginia's, recent years, they've been playing some good ball. I mean, they have. I think it's kind of close, but I think about mid-second quarter, if not early third, Clemson starts pulling away and they keep it pretty far away from Virginia. So.
Yeah, and something to note in that one is Trevor Lawrence is going to be extremely fresh. One, because they didn't play this past weekend, but also the weekend. I want to say it's the weekend before that. He only threw the ball 9 times. So
yeah, and I'm pretty sure, if I'm not mistaken, I don't even think he played the fourth quarter. He may have for a few possessions, but they didn't. Who did they play? Citadel. Yeah, Citadel. So 49-0. So.
I'm pretty sure it was like 49-0 at half too.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I'm got a couple highlights rolling on my computer right now. But yeah, Trevor Lawrence 3 touchdowns on 9 attempts, 8 completions. So he's probably looking to sling it just for the fact that it goes back to the Heisman talk, man. It's all going to come down to stats, and if you're throwing the ball 9 times, your yards aren't going to be there. Your touchdowns might be, and your interception ratio is going to be looking good, but if you don't have the yards, it could hurt your chances later on when it comes to you being in New York.
Yeah.
Well, man, first college football cast. I enjoyed it. I felt more comfortable this week too.
Yeah.
Just getting that first one out of the way.
Definitely a lot more to talk about in college for sure.
Absolutely.
Like we were talking about earlier, I think there's a lot more people that are more involved with college football than they are. So definitely exciting. Look forward to this week. A lot of great games. A lot of
Yeah, next week's going to be fun. I actually just swapped to our outro screen, but I don't think it was picking up your audio, so I had to swap back. So if you're watching, that's what happened there. But yeah, so college football, like you said, there's a lot more to cover, but at the same time, it kind of requires more of us because we have to pay attention to a lot more people.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it just as much as I do NFL. I've actually started enjoying NFL more recently once we all started playing fantasy football together. It's made me appreciate the NFL more, and then Red Zone too.
Yeah.
I started watching Red Zone about 3 years ago, and it kind of changed my whole experience as far as watching the
I agree.
NFL. So if you don't watch Red Zone, we highly recommend that.
So it's a must. If you love football, Red Zone is the way to go.
Yeah, I wouldn't even be opposed to maybe doing like a live, not necessarily a live podcast, but just like a viewing party essentially. One day, me and you get together, watch Red Zone, have a couple people come in, watch with us and whatnot.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we got a lot of friends that are big in the NFL just like we are, so I know they'd be pretty excited for something like that. So let's do it.
Yeah, we got a lot of stuff we can definitely do, and once we grow and people start telling us what they want, we'll hop on it and get things going. Nonetheless, appreciate you guys tuning in. This is the Point After podcast. I'm Gage. That's Matthew, and this will be uploaded. You're watching this today. We have a couple more videos coming out this week that are college football related. If you're not the biggest fan of college football, but you like the NFL, we have an NFL podcast that will come out on Thursday or Friday. And then we have some other videos that come out as well covering topics that we don't cover. We actually put out a video specifically on Florida earlier today if you want to check that out. Or it was actually yesterday by the time you're seeing this. So we have NFL, college football, and eventually we're going to get into some Alabama high school football. I got a couple interviews lined up. I think you guys are really, really going to enjoy. But yeah, like I said, this is the Point After podcast, and we'll see you guys in a couple days.
Absolutely. Hey, like the picture says, get in, loser. We're going air raiding. I look forward to the rest of the weeks to come. And yeah, that's all I got to say, man. Enjoyed it.
Yep. Well, I will see you next time, Matt.
All right, brother.